So a lot of people find sales pretty intimidating. A lot of people think of sales as a pretty dirty word when it comes to business. But the reality of it is that sales is essentially the way in which you get money into your business. And as an entrepreneur, as a business person, it should be something that you really look forward to because it's the way in which you're going to thrive and survive. Most people's perspective on sales is when they've been sold to really, really badly, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people have a very negative perspective of what sales is all about. Most of us can associate with a situation where you've spent money on something and you actually feel really quite irritated by doing it because the salesperson's been really pushy or tried to sell you insurance or sell you whatever else, and it becomes very irritating. Similarly, most of us have been in a situation where we've come out of somewhere, a shop or a store, spent much more money than we anticipated, but we feel really good about it because we've just had great customer service. In essence, you've just been sold to really, really well, because sales is about understanding the needs of the customer and then being able to deliver your product or service against those needs in a way that makes the customer feel good. So sales is not about manipulating and being forceful and being aggressive. It's really about understanding the needs of the customer and motivating them to do business with you, motivating them to buy your product or service. Sales is really every single touch point that the customer has with the business, the way in which you deliver the product or service, however many people within that organization you have to get involved with the sales process, whether it's the accountancy department, the technology people, the marketing people, whoever it is, you have to build into the sales process every single touch point that your company has with them, because that all has the capacity to affect both the way in which they perceive your business, the way in which they perceive the value that's created, and ultimately how good they feel about paying whatever you've charged for them. So the right time for an early stage company or any company to go out and sell is as early as possible. A lot of companies fall into the trap of trying to absolutely perfect their product or service before they go out and sell, but you learn a huge amount by selling early on. It's really about getting out there and understanding what the customer wants, how they want to receive the product or service, where on the balance sheet it's going to sit for them, what is the value of the difference it creates. You're only going to find that by getting out there, rolling up your sleeves and talking to the customers as early as possible. And doing it earlier helps you to avoid some really key and critical mistakes. If you're selling direct to customers, one of the best things you can do is find a way of getting your product, no matter how early it is in its development process, in front of customers as early as possible. So if you're selling directly to consumers, get an early version of your product up and running and test it out with people as early as you can. There's some great examples of companies who've done this really, really well. Innocent Smoothies, famous in the UK for pioneering the sort of smoothie movement. Got knock-ups of their product ready, took them to Glastonbury, had two bins, a yes bin and a no bin. And they said, please put the cups in here, depending on whether you think we should give up our day jobs to pursue this as a real business. About 95% of them went in the yes bin, and the rest, as they say, is history. So find a way of getting in front of your target customers as early as possible and get their feedback early on. Make your mistakes quick and cheap and early on, and you can do things about negating them going forwards. So one of the challenges for a business when it's starting out is to try and work out which customers you're going to go and see. A startup company isn't just limited by the amount of financial resources it has, it's also in terms of time. So just going to share a way of exploring your market in a really simple fashion. And this is a graph of potential versus effort. Now, potential can be in terms of the size of the market segment, the amount of money you could get from a single customer, etc. And effort is the amount of effort it takes to start doing business with that particular company. Now, while this is high potential and this is low potential, this is high effort and this is low effort. And when you cross this dotted line, that's the point at which you start doing business with this company and you start getting money into your bank account. What we do is we start sitting down and thinking about, well, who are our potential customers? And what we start to do is try and work out of all of the possible companies we could be doing business with, where do they fit in terms of potential and where do they fit in terms of effort? What often happens when we do this with companies is we can end up with a lot of stuff over here in the middle. It's very, very unusual to have a business up here high and right. And we've got to try and decide who we should call first. Now, conventional wisdom would suggest that, well, we have somebody here that's high and to the right, they're really high potential, relatively low effort, we should obviously go for these guys. But that comes with a word of warning. If these guys are some of the highest potential customers you're going to have, you really don't want to get anything wrong with doing business with them. So it may well be prudent to test out your sales process, to test out the way in which you deliver your product or service with somebody down here in this bottom right hand corner. People that aren't going to be a huge amount of business, they're not too much effort, but it's a great way of testing your market out and getting some understanding of the sales process and the way in which you market what you do. It really is important that you start doing business so that you're starting to move some of these really big potential clients this way and not simply just picking the low-hanging fruit. You may well find in discussing with these companies on the first meeting that they will move. And it won't necessarily just be towards the point where they're doing business with you. You may find that actually they're worth a lot less money than you thought. Or they may be an awful lot more effort than you thought. Similarly, they may well be infinitely higher potential than you thought. And so it's really worthwhile keeping this as a sort of living and breathing document, putting the names of the companies on here and really trying to understand where you should spend your time in order to get the most out of it, in order to generate the most sales in the most sensible fashion. Working out how much to charge for your product or service is fundamentally important, and it's all driven by understanding the value of the difference you create. When it comes to actually coming up with a number, keeping that in mind, you can work out how much it costs you to deliver and develop and design and get the product into the customer's hands and add a percentage, which is a cost plus version of it. But there's also just purely selling on the value of the difference you create, especially in consultancy or services. This is really important because what are you going to charge if you create £500,000 worth of value to a customer every year? What if you help them create £1 million worth of value, £10 million of value? It's really important to build in some flexible component that means that you are actually sharing in the value that you create, rather than just saying, well, it costs me this much to get to the meeting, I'll put my time in as £100 an hour and then add a bit so that I'm putting more money into the business. If you understand what value you're creating, it will help you focus on customers where you're creating a very defined value and meeting a very specific need, and you can get the most out of that transaction financially. For anybody who's ever tried to sell anything knows that the way in which you articulate the sales proposition, the sales proposal, evolves over time. You'll choose different language for different people, you will find better and more elegant, more simple ways of articulating what it is you do. It's really important to keep on reflecting on and refining the actual sales process. So the way in which you gather information, the way in which you approach a customer, the way in which you actually deliver the product or service as part of the sales experience for the customer. And always look for ways in which you can improve or innovate on that process to enhance the value proposition, to enhance the value you create, but also potentially to reduce some of the costs or overheads of delivering that sale. As you learn more, you should put that information to good use and try and find better efficiencies, better economies of scale, and always look for those improvements in the sales process as you go along. So, sales in its most simple essence is about, generating customers, finding them, understanding their needs, and delivering spectacular customer service. It's about delivering value in the best way that you can. Because getting a customer for the first time is really expensive, really difficult, takes a huge amount of time. Keeping that customer is a lot cheaper. So you deliver great customer service, you continue to deliver great value, you ideally have a customer for life.